Pokémon, except when all 6 of your Pokémon faint, you win the game. It's a format called the Loser's Game on Pokémon Showdown, where you win the battle by losing the battle. Where you come up with strategies to make your Pokémon faint as quickly as you can, while also using strategies to disturb your opponent. It's a format where the 3 best Pokémon are Calyrex Shadow, Smeargle, and Sandshrew Alola. Take a look at the finals of a recent Loser's Game tournament where the winner actually won $100. You can see a clash between the 2 best archetypes. But we'll go over this game at the end. First, what do you think the best strategies are? You have to use 6 Pokemon and they have to be level 100. If you thought the best strategy is to use a self one-hit KO move like Explosion, you'd be right. Unfortunately, you'd be a little too right. Self one-hit KO moves like Explosion or Memento are banned for being too good. They turn the game into an uninteractive, boring scenario where it becomes a race to see who can use Memento 6 times in a row. It reduces the game to one and only one good strategy. If your second guess is Shedinja, you're also too right again. Knocking out a 1 HP Pokemon is too easy, and Shedinja is banned in older generations and is unavailable in Generation 9. But with those strategies banned, there are a ton of interesting moves, abilities, items, and overall strategies around trying to knock yourself out. You're not just looking for a good way to faint, you're looking for the best way to faint. As a baseline, let's take an example. Say you give a Pokemon the Assault Vest item, which means they can only use attacking moves. But then you don't teach it any attacking moves, only status moves. Because it has no moves available, the Pokemon will be forced to use Struggle, doing 25% damage to itself each turn. That strategy would take 4 turns to knock you out. And as you'll find out, that's pretty bad. There are strategies that work much quicker than 4 turns per Pokemon. For example, Perish Song is a move that makes all Pokemon faint in 3 turns. You can use Perish Song and then use a move like Roar to make your opponent switch out, meanwhile you faint. You can even go further and use Baton Pass and actually pass the Perish Song condition to a teammate so they can be knocked out instead. Perish Song is a 3-turn strategy, but you can go even faster than 3 turns. There are 2 main meta strategies in the format, and the first one is built around a strategy where you knock yourself out in only 2 turns per Pokemon. It's about using high recoil attacks. I call this strategy Steel Beam Spam. Steel Beam is a high power move that always does 50% damage in recoil whenever you use the move no matter what. That means you are effectively guaranteed to knock yourself out in 2 turns. Load your team up with 6 Steel Beam Pokemon and you're looking at a win in 12 turns condition. This is one of the most optimal strategies in the format, and it's pretty straightforward too. There are other variants like using the move Chloroblast, which is the grass type version of Steel Beam. But this strategy is not actually foolproof and there are ways around it. First of all though, the main meta item is Black Sludge, an item that reduces your HP by 12.5% per turn. This is generally better than Toxic Orb because it works much faster. Black Sludge immediately starts hitting you with that 12%, whereas Toxic Orb takes 1 turn to poison you, and then that damage increments from 6 to 12 to 18 and so on. There are some minor use cases like avoiding paralysis or sleep, and you also don't become vulnerable to knockoff because once you've been poisoned you don't care about losing your item. But overall, Black Sludge is much better. The second most relevant item is Mental Herb, so that you gain a one-time immunity to Taunt, one of the best moves in the format. Also, all Pokemon will almost use 0 EVs and IVs in every stat and then maximize their speed stat because that's the only stat that matters. You want to be doing little damage with your attacks and you want to be taking a lot of damage from the opponent. The only exception is the HP stat. You want your HP stat to be as low as possible, while also being divisible by 8, that way you take the most amount of damage possible from Black Sludge and any sort of recoil move. One of the main forms of counterplay to Steel Beam is Heal Pulse. When your opponent tries to lose their HP, you simply give it back to them. It's a good way to at least go 1 for 1 with a Steel Beam Pokemon. And this is where we start to get into the web of different interactions. Substitute is an excellent move in the format because it drops your HP by 25%, but also it makes you immune to Heal Pulse. You can substitute 1 time to block Heal Pulse and then you enable yourself to use Steel Beam. It also has the benefit of making you immune to losing your item from knockoff. Because Substitute and Heal Pulse are such good moves, Taunt is a great move to stop them and other supporting moves too. You can force your opponent to struggle and then you Heal Pulse them. Imprison is also a good move because of how common these top moves are. If you Imprison, you stop the opponent from making the same move as you. One of the top Pokemon is Steel Beam Imprison Klefki. You stop the opponent from using their Steel Beam while you yourself are free to do so. Also, a strategy that works faster than Steel Beam is feinting to Steel Beam. If you fill your team with weak Fairy-type Pokemon, you can beat a Steel Beam strategy because they have to use 2 turns to knock themselves out while you feint to their attacks in 1 turn. A great Pokemon in the format is actually Impidimp. It has Prankster Taunt and is so weak that it feints in 1-hit KO to most Pokemon's Steel Beam. Similarly, Sandshrew Alola is actually one of the best, if not the single best Pokemon in the format because it has the weakest Steel Beam ever with a base special attack of 10. No Pokemon will ever feint to Sandshrew Alola's Steel Beam. Oh, and by the way, because of Prankster Taunt, Terra Dark is one of the 3 viable Terra types in the format because Dark types are immune to Prankster. There's also one more 2-turn strategy as well, which is Ghost type Curse. A Ghost type's Curse does 50% of HP damage to itself and inflicts the Curse status condition. That's generally speaking a good trade, and it's why Calric Shadow is one of the best Pokemon in the format. It's extremely fast and has Heal Pulse and Taunt, great support moves as mentioned earlier, and the Ghost type Curse. Similarly, Terra Ghost Curse is a viable option on most Pokemon, and that's the second viable Terra type. Most strategies revolve around these interactions: Steel Beam, Substitute, Taunt, Heal Pulse, Imprison, and Curse. Different Pokemon have different niches within these interactions. We already mentioned Sandshrew Alola and Klefki, but there's also Nosepass, a Pokemon with Magnet Pull and Steel Beam. With Magnet Pull, it can force a Steel type to get stuck in battle, and because Nosepass is a Rock type, it's likely to feint to an opponent's Steel Beam. Goldengo unfortunately has a strong Steel Beam, but its ability Good as Gold blocks Heal Pulse and Taunt. Ponyard, Cufant, Clink, other weak Steel-type Pokemon are all good because of Steel Beam. Hisuian Electrode is extremely fast and also has Chloroblast to make it one of the fastest ways to 2-hit KO yourself. Smeargle is one of the best Pokemon in the format as well because its attacks are weak, its defenses are weak, and it gets every move in the game. Steel Beam, Spore, Taunt, whatever you want, Smeargle has everything and it forms the ultimate utility Pokemon who can fit any strategy. You would really only deviate from these strategies if you had a very good reason. For example, Magic Bounce Espeon is good because you want a Pokemon who can bounce back Taunt. Then you could use Terra Ghost to gain access to Curse. It's a niche option, but you can use Skill Swap Magikarp Clefable too. You can stop the opponent from taking recoil on Steel Beam. You would use it on their last Pokemon and watch as they suddenly have no way to knock out their final Pokemon. But there's one fundamentally distinct strategy from Steel Beam spam and is the second and only other archetype in the metagame. That archetype is Stealth Rock. The idea is you want to use Stealth Rock and then use Court Change to bring that Stealth Rock back to your side of the field. Then you switch around until you faint. It's one of the only strategies that can win quicker than Steel Beam. However, in exchange for winning faster than Steel Beam, it's also easier to disrupt. Moves like Rapid Spin or Tidy Up or Defog can interfere with Stealth Rock ideas. Goldengo's Good as Gold ability blocks Defog, but not Tidy Up. For example, Charizard is a good Pokemon on this archetype because it has Belly Drum to lose half its HP and also takes 50% from Stealth Rock. It also leads to the third and final viable Terra type, which is Terra Ice. Terra Ice is good to make a Pokemon weak to Steel Beam so it faints, and is also good at making a Pokemon weak to Stealth Rock. Now back to the finals of the tournament. It was a battle between Steel Beam Spam and Stealth Rock. Interestingly, the Stealth Rock user was Swinub, because Swinub gets Oblivious, which makes it immune to Taunt. That is crucial. In fact, the Stealth Rock strategy is so crucial that the Smeargle also has Stealth Rock, and both Smeargle and Cinderace have Court Change. Goldengo blocks Defog and Rapid Spin, and Xianpao and Talonflame are 2 Pokemon weak to Stealth Rock and are also incredibly fast as to block moves like Tidy Up by using Taunt. Meanwhile, on the other side, we have 4 Steel Beam Pokemon, Caloric Shadow with Ghost-type Curse and Heal Pulse, and interestingly, a Mousehold. Mousehold is used purely for the Stealth Rock matchup because of Tidy Up. But it also has the move Copycat so that it can copy a common move like Steel Beam. Mousehold as a Steel Beamer is more difficult to use, but the payoff is your improved Stealth Rock matchup. In the game, we see that Tidy Up disrupts the Court Chain strategy, and it simply takes too long to get going. In the end, the Steel Beam strategy wins the entire tournament. That's the story of the loser's game. If you want to hear more about these niche metagames, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It's free, helps me out a lot, and doesn't cost you anything. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.